So hello to everyone coming in the live. Just making sure that everything is set up behind the scenes so I can see what's going on. Let me know who's here. Let me know how you're feeling. What is going on here? And make sure you put a like on the video as you're coming in as well. That will help to be able to pop up the algorithms of this video. But yeah, let me know who's in the live today. I don't even know what day we're on. It's any day at this point. Like literally all of the days are just merging into each other. Quite interesting to experience, but this is what I'm going to be talking about, or part of what I'm going to be talking about today actually. I was getting a lot of messages coming through. And me myself, I actually have a Capricorn Stellium. And I'll talk about that a bit later. Hi Lamar. Hi Carlos, hope you're well. How are you guys feeling and what's going on over your side at the moment? I know we're all kind of fragmented right now. I know our countries are all just doing different things at the moment. I know America's about to open up. UK is just on some joke thing right now. It's all over the I can't even speak today. It's all over the place. But yeah. Najay says, Philly is crazy. Oh, wow. What's going on in Philly? I know it's just crazy energies. But yeah. What is a stellium, first of all? So a stellium is where there's a buildup of planets in the same sign. And you can normally see that, or some of you may have that in your charts. You may find a buildup of Capricorn energy in your charts. You may find a buildup of Gemini energy in your charts. You know, we all have different unique placements and combinations when it comes to our astrological charts. But at this moment, we currently have an interesting build-up, multiple planets. A stellium is usually recognized by 3 or more planets. So we have that playing out in Saturn at this moment. And it's interesting because I natally am a Capricorn. I have a Capricorn stellium myself, build up on my 3rd house, which is interesting as to how it makes sense in terms of how my experience played out 2 years ago, and all of this culminating with my own Saturn return. This is all happening in Saturn in Capricorn. So it's very interesting. I keep talking about these reflections. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, go back to my other videos, my past videos, and you'll be able to understand exactly what I'm talking about. But I want to kind of demystify this Saturnian energy a little bit, because there's something that I've been having to do myself through my own Saturn return. And there's something that was channeling through to me, a message. I've been getting this message for the last week or so now. And I wanted to go live with this before, but I was just like, no, let it sit a bit more. Let it still filter through. And it's interesting because some events took place that made me understand exactly why I had to wait, just so that I could understand the fullness of what was actually coming through. And there's still a lot more that will come through, I'm sure. It's the way that the universe works. But it's to do with preservation and the concept of ice. And I was actually studying icebergs today, and I wrote out some notes, and some of what I wrote was in between some of the research that I done with icebergs. And I'll kind of talk about that in a second. Let me just go back through your comments. Lamar's like, still on lockdown, different states doing different things. Yep. Police everywhere got sounds boxes telling the public to stay 6 foot away. I know, it feels like a movie. Dramatic over there. Yeah, it's just hella dramatic. Like I said before, this energy is just going to be super played out, super over exaggerated, and we can see that playing out at the moment. But let's kind of just take a moment to reel it in for a moment so that we can understand exactly what's happening to us. What is this whole thing really about? What can we do with this energy? And this is a very, very exciting energy. I told you guys from before, this is the best time to be alive right now. Like, forget what all of this fear-mongering on on the media and everything. You can see what's happening with Trump. You can see there's a lot of changes that's coming in that allows us to give us the opportunity to now create a solid ground now, which is awesome. It's an awesome position to be in. But one of the things, like I've been pushing, we need to really get our money up, really get on our businesses, really get out there because that system is gone, right? And we're all on lockdown. We're all, or on lockdown, so to speak. If you guys, when you guys actually look at what the UK government has actually been given as guidelines, and the foolishness that they've been, you can't do your kitchen, you can do this but you can't do, I don't understand. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke, which is why I said they're trolling you guys on a different level. But Saturn rules restrictions, or so to speak. The traditional, what the overall uh understanding of Saturn energy would be restrictions, limitations, structures. It's everything that's connected to this third dimension. Um, it's also to do with the ability to master yourself. So this is where Saturnian energy would be um, connected to a lot of corporate, like the corporate world, business world, because it's an energy of success, achievement, mastery. But that's actually what's happening to us, regardless of what is happening outside of our environment right now. That's actually what's happening to us. And there's something that there's been a word that's been coming through, or a phrase that's been coming through to me a lot, and it says, a delay is not a delay. A delay is not a denial. And that's something I've been having to learn myself as a Capricorn Stellium, because I've had to learn extreme patience. Um, Not only do I have a Capricorn Stellium, I have Saturn natally retrograde in my chart. So what that can often mean is that my life can often feel like, until I get to my first Saturn return, it doesn't feel like I'm living life, and until I get to my second, I don't really um get to, that's where I reach my peak, especially where I have Leo in my 10th house, which is the house of Capricorn. So that's how you can see how that delay thing can play out. But why it's not a denial is because the processes that it takes for you to get to mountaintops, that's what Capricorn and Saturn energy actually represents. It's the Capricorn is represented by the sea goat. um and it's interesting because they always talk about the goat part of Capricorn or Saturn, which really is that whole Baphomet type energy. But it's a sea goat. So as much as it's got the body of a goat, it's got the tail of a fish, right? There's still a good thing that can come of that Saturnian energy. It's still a very sensitive, and this is where a lot of Capricorns will feel like, all of their the vulnerable side of themselves, the more sensitive part of themselves, is just trapped inside. It's like, let's put a board there, but this is what I'm going to show to the world, right? And this is essentially what's happening right now. I liken Saturn energy to an iceberg. Like I said, I've been researching the how icebergs are formed and stuff like that. And it's been really interesting because Saturn energy is very cold. It comes off cold, it comes off harsh, it comes off, and this is why those that are in their Saturn or have their Saturn return can often feel a lot of strain, a lot of pressure, because it feels harsh. It's like, hold on, like, can't this just be smooth? I just have to go for a whole last midlife crisis. That just doesn't make any sense, right? Um, but Saturn energy is lessons, is tests. And one of the things that was very prominent for me within the whole mental health experience that I had experienced back in 2017, which is a parallel to 2020 and everything that we're experiencing right now, is that I had to learn to change my perspective to what was happening. Because as much as it looked and it felt like a direct attack, which it was, a direct attack, physical, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, financially as well. It was an attack, but I had to learn how to not see those things as an attack. The thing that kept coming through my head as a mantra is, this is a test, not an attack. This is a test, not an attack. And if you actually train your mind to not see something as an attack, but as a test, that's something that you have to rise to and almost initiate yourself through, because that's what Saturn also represents. Is connected to the energy of Sekhmet, which is the initiator. And it's allowing you to learn to stand in your own divine truth and your own divine power. Anyone who's connected with Sekhmet energy, and it's interesting because I didn't go seeking for Sekhmet. Sekhmet came to me many times, right? And that process has always been a very, very grueling, dark process. It is a very dark night of the soul type thing, because you're just like, what the hell is going on? I'm literally having to fight for my life here. And but that's the initiation, because if you don't go through the types of experiences that will begin to sharpen the abilities and the gifts that you have, how, like, me being in a situation with the mental health, that activated so many giftings I didn't even realize I had. I didn't even realize they were there. But because I was in the fire, I was in the lion's den, I had no choice but to activate them. And this is what this whole energy is going to bring for us. Is so exciting. Like telepathy, or literally, this is going to be real life Doctor Strange. I've been saying this for so long. This is going to be real life Doctor Strange. And this is the flip side of, I don't even want to say the word because I don't want to trigger the algorithm, but you see this, right? And then G, right? That is the flip side of what that actually brings. It's not everything to be afraid of, and it's not not everyone can handle that frequency, which is why a lot of people are being affected at this time. And it's not to say that this is the only impact. There's a lot of layers of everything that's happening, so please don't only put it into that category, but it is a component of something that is actually playing out. But going back onto point, because I'm going to be doing a live later as well, so I don't want to stay on here too long. But Saturn energy, again, it comes off very cold. It comes off very harsh. It's like a shock, right? Which almost is like crashing into an iceberg, right? When you crash into an iceberg, it's a shock. Like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to pattern up my shit, right? Because if I don't pattern this up, I'm gonna sink. This is like Titanic vibes, right? So you have to ask yourself the question, if you do crash into icebergs, why did we crash? We crashed because we underestimated icebergs, right? Icebergs there's two different types of icebergs. There's something that's called bergy bits, which are the icebergs that disintegrate into the water. And those ones, those run deep underneath the sea. You often can't see those, right? So that can come out. You don't even know how far that comes out, and then boom, you've hit something and you don't even know, right? But then you've got growlers. These are the things that can be seen through this by the surface. You can see them above the surface. But you have to begin to remember that not all icebergs you can see. And this is where you have to learn to really begin to feel, right? This is where feeling comes in, because as much as you may not be, for example, 2020, I saw 2020, but there's certain things that I could have never been able to tell you that this was how it's gonna play out. I still didn't even fully understand what was happening. Oh, I've got a work call coming in, I'll call her back in a bit. So yeah, it's wild. So you have to always be aware. This is where we have to have our perception really on point. And this is almost like the polarity between Cancer and Capricorn, because Cancer is incredibly intuitive. And a lot of people don't think that they kind of attribute Capricorn energy to very, you know, just very logical, very practical. No, Capricorns, there's a lot of intuition there, and this is where the sea goat tail comes in. This is where their spiritual, you know, side really comes in. But we have to activate all of our senses, right? It's not just activating sight, it's activating our feeling, it's activating our sense of taste, it's activating our sense of hearing, right? All of our senses. And there's more senses than just the 5 physical senses that we have. I can't remember exactly how many there was. I think it's up to like 22 or something like that, or probably even more. But there's so much more senses that we have that we don't allow ourselves to pay attention to. And these senses are information. That's what Mercury is. Mercury isn't just information, you know, your thoughts or whatever. It's how you receive information, and it's through all of the different senses, right? So this is something I was also I'm just going to read something. So when an iceberg reaches warm waters, so this is essentially new environment that it's unfamiliar with, right? What's happening right now? We don't know what's happening. We don't know where we're going. Some of us don't even know when this lockdown is going to be. We don't even know when we'll be able to restart our businesses, how that's going to look. We don't know a lot of things, right? So when an iceberg reaches warm waters, the new climate attacks it from all sides. So this is where we can often feel the energy of, where am I? Am I supposed to be here? What the frig is happening? Is this really for me? Like, do I actually exist? How do I survive in this current form? That's all things that connect with Saturn, right? But it's also remembering that, and this is where the alchemical aspect of this and the transcendence aspect of this comes in. Ice is just a solid state of water, right? Ice is just it's almost like air and water is basically the same element, but it's just in 2 different states, right? Just like when you steam, when you what's it called, condensation and evaporation, that's all water, right? But then it's turning into air. those 2 elements coincide together. But ice and water, you can look at it and it seems, especially when you're embodying these 2 energies or 2 elements, can feel very extremely the opposite, which is Cancer and Capricorn. Cancer is this very sensitive, you know, trying to retreat into its shell. Capricorn is, I'm in my power. This is who I am. This is what I came here to do, right? I ain't trying to ask no questions. right? So we're having to learn how to be able to flow between these two states and understand the need for both of these states. There is a need for us to learn how to be able to retreat and preserve ourselves. And this is what ice does. Ice is a preserver, right? When you want to be able to preserve your food, what do? You put it in a freezer, right? If you want to, as soon as the body has died, you would put that in a morgue, in a freezer, whatever, to be able to preserve that body until it's ready to do whatever it needs to do and then go for its embalming stage, right? So even in those two states, you can see it through the process, or the metamorphosis, the whole metamorphosis process between a caterpillar and a butterfly. When a caterpillar is in a cocoon, that's its cold state, that's its ice state, right? That's its state where it's having to preserve itself, it's having to freeze time. Because time is another keyword of Saturn. Sorry, bare energy outside. Saturn is another keyword of time. So right now time is being frozen, but don't be irritated by the motion of this frozenness that's happening right now. In this is where the magic takes place. And it's interesting because this week I had a few things that happened that really was really demotivating. It's crazy. I got 100% demotivated and 180% motivated in the same week. It's so crazy. And what I had to realize is the adjustments that had to be taken place. I had to remember, hold on, right now, this is preservation season. So let me just adjust myself to preserve myself for the rest of 2020. Let's just put 20, a lot of people are saying cancel 2020. No, don't say stuff like that, because that's how you actually, words are powerful, right? Spelling, right? This year I'm preserving myself, I'm sharpening myself, I'm sharpening my tools, I'm mastering myself, I'm upgrading my skills, I'm getting clear with the things that I really want to do. And once this whole thing is over, like how I'm going to be able to play it up. I'm really solidifying my streams of income. I'm doing what needs to be done, so that when I come out of this cocoon season, the butterfly is able to fly without any anchors. The butterfly is able to fly without the limitations of the perceptions of the caterpillar, because it's gone through that process. Life will never be the same again. And especially for me, like with the experience that I had in 2017, life will never be the same again because of what I've seen, what I've experienced, the things that I was able to cultivate within my cocoon season. The way I see the world will never be the same again. And so we need to cultivate these tactics right now. And I want to read something else out. Where is my book? There it is. I kept hearing something called I kept hearing a word or a phrase that kept coming through, and it was unleash the heart. And I know there's a lot more to what this was, but I'm only going to read out some of what I was getting, because we are in a very critical stage, right? In this, whilst the nodes are in Cancer and Capricorn right now, the nodes are about to move into Gemini next month, right? This is where it's going to be really, really real. So we are beginning to break some molds because that's what Cancer is. Cancer is the generational influences the cultural influences, all of the influences that aren't yours, right? Because it can be very impressionable sometimes to its surroundings and its environment, its home, right? The things that he finds comforts in. So we're having to learn to really transcend and break out of this mold, which is essentially this ice. Right? This is this ice, but what I kept seeing was this ice forming around the heart. I kept seeing ice forming around the heart and just solidifying things. And the heart is representative of your desires, your creativity. And essentially, this is what some of these people really wanted to do, because I could see it playing out with a lot of people that I know were quite creative. They felt very demotivated, and a lot of their energy was transferred into this whole crazy thing that's going on right now, the Rona. Um, so connected to what I was saying on my last video, where I was saying why I'm not doing that 4-4 meditation. I'm careful with what I engage my energy in. I'm careful with what I attach myself to, because what we don't realize is the unconscious agreements that we make every single day, right? These are the things that we need to begin to become aware of. There's certain attachments that attach ourselves because we've actually legally given permission to it, right? We've legally allowed our energy to be intermingled in this whole thing, and it has nothing to do with that. So right now we really need to be whew, learning to break the mold. Let me read some of this, okay? So if this was part of a free write that I was just writing out, but it was connected to what I was picking up. So it's called Unfreeze the Heart. So unfreeze the heart, unleash the art. The heart needs to speak, but she's been locked up because people thought the mind was more important. How could you neglect? I can't wait to read my writing. How could you neglect the one thing that keeps you alive? Heart. The heart is the inner truth, which is Leo. Leo is able to inspire people with the wisdom that comes from their heart. But with that sextile to Gemini, it has to be grounded in truth. The heart wants to be sovereign, but it overcompensates for the rest of the body as it has to fuel life to it. The heart wants to be sovereign too. What pumps the heart? Blood. And I was thinking of bloodlines, because I was thinking of the veins and the arteries. These are blood lines. This is how, this is even a connection with Cancer, right? Cancer rules bloodlines, generations, but it also rules the fluid that in your body, right? Your blood, water, anything, right? And that's also the limitations as well that we have to begin to break out of. The arteries pumps blood away from the heart to the rest of the body. The veins bring oxygen back to the heart. These are the generational influences. So essentially the heart is going through this natural giving and receiving process, and there's an open flow that allows the heart to remain pumping healthily. What is this thing that helps the heart to pump healthily? Creativity, allowing yourself to be in your own desires. This is coming back into your inner child. It's interesting because when I see my son, I'm learning so much about myself and my inner child just by watching him, and I'm having to really challenge myself because he's a force to be reckoned with. He has no fear whatsoever. He will go and jump off a sofa and jump out of his cot and do whatever he wants to do, and he's having the most fun of his life. Me as a mother, I'm seeing this and I'm like, you're gonna hurt yourself right now. We ain't got no time to be going to no hospital. Who's going to hospital right now, please, child? No, like, behave yourself. But then at the same time, I'm having to recognize how much and yes, it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a place of concern, and you know, you always want the best for your child. But how much are we suppressing their desires just to be able to express and explore themselves? They're children, right? That's all they do, right? Exploring their environment. He's just exploring how free he can be. You know, yes, we can show them, okay, this may be a boundary. You know, you may not want to do that because you may hurt yourself, but let's not let's really learn not to suppress these desires too much. And the reason why I'm saying this is because we see it in ourselves. And I mentioned in the video that I did with Osset, Lucid Living TV, about sovereignty. And I said that a very simple way for you to be able to acknowledge your sovereignty in the moment is acknowledging your desires. Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? Do I not want to do this? Do I not want to do that? Because a lot of the times we feel like we have to do something because of someone else, their expectations, all of this type, but we're not being sovereign, right? These are your desires that you're suppressing, and these are the things that are going to end up biting you back, right? Because you're going to end up being resentful that you never actually lived your desires, you never actually lived your own life. You allowed other people to live it for you, and this is something that has to stop. And another thing that was coming to me was, so this is the more that we trap the heart is the more that we trap our electricity. The heart is electric. The heart dies from lack of electricity, which is why you have to use what do you call it? The spark thing to be able to spark you back up. You need electricity to keep you alive. That's creativity. You create that, right? And then this was interesting because I was likening this whole situation to Noah's Ark. This is what came up for me. But then I broke down the word Noah. And when I hear Noah, I hear no, ah. No, ah. No, ah. No release. No, ah. That's a sigh, right? A sigh of release. No, ah means trapped anxiety. That means you're not going to have a release because you're going to be stuck in this fair state and you're not going to feel like you're free. It's all mental. It's all a mental slavery thing. It's crazy when you really look at it. And then I was getting root chakra. Oh, I'll go into that other bit later because I still want to be able to unravel that because it's very, 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 very intriguing. Because it links to what's happening with America and the UK. The UK is actually the heart chakra of the earth. The US is actually the root chakra of the earth. And so it's very interesting just seeing a lot of shiftings taking place. And the two need to be in harmony. The two doesn't need to be separate. The two needs to be in harmony. But one has been dominating for a very long time. That hasn't allowed the heart to speak. I'll go into that at another time. But there's some very, very deep messages that's just been coming to me. Just unraveling what's actually really happening and how you can really reflect it into your own lives. Let me just continue to go through this because as I said, I don't want to stay on here too long. I've got to be back on in a few hours. I've got a very interesting live with the Blackest Truth, Neath Night. We're going to be talking about digital marketing and business and all that kind of stuff. So let me hurry up and finish this so that I can have a break to come back on later on tonight. So yeah, Saturn teaches us that ice is a limitation to our progress and achievements, but it is just a perceived limitation because it may reveal we may not have the discipline in certain areas. Now, this is important because when I said earlier about a lot of the perceptions when it comes to Saturn, a lot of these perceptions are of these negative ideologies of Saturn, restrictions and limitations and all of that kind of stuff. It's because up until I believe it was 1970, I can't remember the date, but wasn't very long ago, Saturn was perceived as the last planet in our solar system. We didn't know that there was planets past Saturn. We didn't know there was Neptune. We didn't know there was Uranus, and we didn't know there was Pluto. Those outer planets represent our whole transcendental experience. They represent our whole spiritual realm, right? The soul, all of these different types of things. And it wasn't until after then these things began to um these ideologies began to come up. Like even when Pluto was discovered, this is when psychoanalysis began, right? Because you was able to have that deep perception into self. um so I don't want to go out off of my track. So yeah, Saturn will throw us in the deep end and it will ask us, what have you learned over time and how can you utilize these things to progress your life forward? And if you're on your Saturn return, this will be incredibly intense for you right now, as for me. Which is why I had one of those moments this week. But what ended up coming out of it was amazing because I had been preparing myself this whole time. I had been preparing myself to get to this point. Of, let me just backtrack a bit because I didn't actually finish my point. So the reason why I said I was talking about Saturn and being the last planet that were it. Sorry, we believed that that was the last planet of the universe. That means that we perceived Saturn as the end. We perceived Saturn as the limit. We perceived the third dimension as the limit. We didn't know that there was more than that. So when you look at that from a flip perspective and you look at Saturn, Saturn would then be looked at as a perceived limitation. It's not a limitation. And this is why it becomes a place that you can begin to master, because you wasn't actually limited. You wasn't limited in there at all. You just saw yourself as limited because you thought it was too hard. And you was like, no, this is a long ass mountain. It's gonna take me ages to get there. Right? It's interesting because I had a conversation with someone that I value very, very much. And I was talking career development with them, and they were like, you should actually go into programming, you should go more into tech and like link that in with everything you're doing. And I was like, I know that my dad's a computer engineer, but that's not my mind. You know, but it's because I see those things as a perceived limitation because of my experiences of my academic experiences. I've sat in the third house. The third house represents childhood education and your school experience. I didn't really have a good experience, right? I struggled a lot through school, through college, and through university. So to me, anything that's outside of my realm of creativity, which is my place of comfort, looks like a perceived limitation for me. But then what Saturn is trying to do is be like, look, you see that as a limitation. That's not a limit. You can do that. That's you, right? So we have to begin to flip our perspectives. Then I've wrote, on the iceberg surface, warm air melts snow. This can also be linked to Libra energy. The ability to cooperate and make the necessary decisions that will begin to bring balance as we begin to become the overall designers of our life. Saturn is exalted in Libra. So then I've got ice interpools called melt ponds that can trickle through the iceberg and widen cracks. At the same time, warm water laps at the iceberg edges, melting the ice and causing chunks off to break and causing chunks of ice to break off. On the underside, warmer waters melt the iceberg from the bottom up. So essentially, when we begin to build our foundations again and flip our perspective from, because we've got a very externalized ideal of identity. It's very externalized. It's very even like how we see ourselves. We would always see ourselves as the best versions of ourselves, but we may not be there yet. And it's a thing where it's like everything takes a process, and it takes you having to go down, flip perspective, and not feel like you're already there yet, not feel like you've already got it all together yet, not feel like you're always on a journey, you're always learning. There's never a time when you will stop learning. So yeah, it's time for us to flip our perspective and really begin to see things from the inside right now. Really begin to, like, this is another announcement I'm going to make. I was going to make it separately, but I will be postponing the spa retreat until next year. And that's simply because I don't really know what's really going to be happening with this thing, if they're going to shut it down to how many people or whatever. I don't know what's happening, and I'm not really trying to wait for them, but I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I hear the message, preserve, adjust, do what you need to do, and then resume. Right? Everything will resume the way it needs to. It will not resume the same way that it was before, but it will resume in such a better way than you could have ever imagined. When I lost everything in 2017, literally I lost my home, I lost everything in my home, I lost, so many things that were really key, because at the time that happened, I was reaching a peak in my life. I was almost where I was right now, but back in 2017 in terms of my development, and where I wanted to go. But this tower moment had to come to just readjust my perception and just readjust certain things to be like, you was looking at this and that was going to be a direction that you was going to go down, and you was really sure about that. That still may be it, but maybe if you just bear slightly left or bear slightly right, might find that might work a bit better for you. So my encouragement to you is that allow all of this to happen. Ice is melting, molds are breaking, and what is water? Water is the beginning of new life, right? Now new life can begin to birth and grow and be and create. I'm so excited for what is. I'm not scared about the economy. The economy is gonna boom in a crazy way that we've never seen, right? Because it's a digital age. It's a new age now, right? It's just we're not just the system that has been here before. That's gone, right? That's gone. So yeah, let me just quickly look at your messages before I head off, because I don't want to make sure I burn myself out before tonight. Whew. So Baphomet symbol is about man mastering the material plane. Exactly. Mastering the material plane, not being afraid of it. Going back to the way life is supposed to go. Yep, flowing beautifully between yin and yang. Perfectly. Hi, logical mermaid. We can be so scared and fear it or accept it and create some bum ass. Exactly. Do you know what's crazy you saying that? I have always created, like, okay, so I've been in situations where I've always been alone, right? In a sense where I wanted to do something and someone will say, yeah, I'll help you. And then I end up on my own and having to learn to do it myself. But then I realize I have a new skill and I love it. And then boom, Bob's your uncle, right? I've had this so many times, and I especially had this with, I remember when I was in uni and in university, and I had a I had to learn production, music production, for my course, and I didn't know anything about music production. I was a musician. I'm a very good musician, right? But I didn't know anything about music production. And there was someone who was supposed to be teaching me, and they ended up frigging everything up. And then it got to a point where I had my assignment. I was actually sick at the time as well, so I lost a lot of time. It was a 12-week project, and we were supposed to be producing our own music for our own concert. Um a concert that we were supposed to put on. And I remember, yeah, so about 6 weeks of those 12 weeks, I was really ill. For those of you who don't know, I have fibromyalgia, and the way that it impacts me is in crazy, crazy ways that completely paralyzes me. Um, so I found that I wasn't able to be in uni at that time. So I literally had 6 weeks left, right? And I had to learn to produce whilst create 6 tracks that from scratch. And I was actually hella proud of myself because I was like, whoa, this actually sounds really dope. And when I started doing that, I started finding a passion in it. And this is what actually helped me to build my last platform on Instagram, when I was an artist, because that's how people started to recognize me. They'll see me putting up my production videos, and they'll see me putting up my singing videos, to the point that there's people high up in the music industry, America, whatever, that know my name that I don't even know. Like, I get people say coming back to me saying, oh, I had this conversation and they mentioned your name, like, do you know about Naomi Nams Elliott? That was my artist name. And they'll be like, yeah, like, and I'll be like, and they'll come back to me and I'll be like, how do they know me? Like, I even been promoting my music for the last 5 years, right? I look at my Spotify and I'm like, that's still pumping. I don't even promote my music. But the point is, I had to position myself really, really well, just by allowing myself to grit my teeth and recognize that this was just a process to get me to realize that the things that I thought I could never do, because it was really an imposter thing. I would, especially when it came to things like music and production, and especially anything really techie, I see that as a very masculine thing. Especially when I was a musician and I used to play a lot in churches, and be booked out for different functions and churches, church services and stuff. Um, and I remember one time I set up my keyboard for a service, and there was this guy that came up to me and he was like, oh, so who are you setting up for? Because normally, like, if you're like especially because of the nature of who I was playing for, um like, sometimes there'll be another person who'll be setting up the keyboard for them depending on who they are. So he was like, yeah, who are you setting up your keyboard for? And I looked at him and I was like, for myself. And I really didn't like the title of female musician or female producer because of the spotlight that it would place on me. Like, it's almost like, oh, she's a female producer, she's a female musician, and she sings. She better be good. It's like there's an expectation that, oh, she has to be an enigma, she has to be this, and it's like people will pay more attention to what I do than what someone else would do because I'm just a female musician and a female artist. And it really annoyed me. But that, me going down and developing that skill, probably was one of the best things that I could have done for myself, because it it changed my life in unimaginable ways. It gave me connections to people that I've been listening to my whole life. You were my inspiration. Now you're coming to me talking about, yeah, you're the true essence of your sound. I'm like, hold on, I copied my sound off of you. So it's a thing where it's like, everything is always for a reason, and we have to remember to just learn how to take these things in its stride. um Logical mermaid, what is the UK's numerology year? I don't know, I'm not really a numerologist, so I don't really know about that. Reminds me of the story of the Grinch. Yeah, I saw some key YouTubers doing that 44 thing, and I'm like, no way, it shows the reality of their intentions. Trust me, like people just need to just be paying attention right now. Um, and to remind myself that I can allow her to do things that she wants to do if they exactly even if they are dangerous. This is an experience. This is adventure. Like we have to learn how to cultivate our inner inventionness again. You know. Um, Amy says, I love seeing your process, Masha. Oh, thank you, my lovely. Do you know what? It's beautiful just allowing myself to just be in my process, because I tell you guys all the time, I'm unapologetic about my journey. I'm probably gonna shift again, like in my ideologies, because I'm the type of person who I'm just continually I'm on a search to I'm on a quest to evolve, continually evolve myself and continually grow. Um, Terry says, what are some things to truly look for? What are you referring to in regards to looking in? What are you referring to? Sorry. Um, Let me know, and then I'll kick off before tonight. But yeah, like I said, really just tune in right now. Tune into spirit, because the uncertainty is not going to come from outside. Um, the uncertainty is only going to come from within. Um, Terry says, you said pay attention to things. Pay attention to your intuition. Pay attention to what you feel. Pay attention to, like you always know. Just like I showed you guys when I did my live, and there's how many people, I can't even begin to reply back to everyone right now because it's been so busy. But the amount of people just like, yeah, I didn't feel it either. I didn't feel it either. You all know, right? You all know what you're to connect with. You all know what you're not meant to connect with, and you all know what you're meant to be doing. You just don't trust yourself. So this is a message to learn to trust yourself, trust the process, and trust that all will be well. So again, I will be live at 8 p.m. GMT with Neef Knight, The Blackish Truth. We'll be talking about digital marketing, we'll be talking about business, and we'll be correlating it to the self-made Netflix limited series by about Madam CJ Walker. And we'll be just digging into all of that. So it's going to be quite an interesting, fun live. So yeah, until next time, I will catch you guys on the other side.